Welcome to All Things AI. My name is Ishan, and I'm your host at the All Things AI podcast. This is the 14th episode of the All Things AI podcast, and today we have Nicolas Gertler, who's the first ever student AI ambassador at Yale University. In addition, he's also the chair of the AI Issue Advisory Council at Encode Justice. Nicolas, welcome to the channel. It's an honor to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Ishan. It's great to speak with you. I'm excited to delve into the conversation.
So I guess before I get into the conversation itself, I know college students have like a long winter break and everything, much longer than high school students. So I'm just curious to see if this break has been a good stress buster for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great to come back home to Los Angeles and sort of just chill. I've of course been working on all the projects that I'm involved in, specifically efforts to integrate AI into Yale as in my role as student AI ambassador. So I've been working hard on that. 2024 is going to be a huge year for AI and education, as well as AI across all these different domains. So we're sort of just prepping as we enter the year.
Yeah, and I look forward to seeing much more from you and Yale, I guess, from AI. But with that being said, the first portion of today's interview is going to be dedicated to your work as a student AI ambassador. So just as a general question, what part of AI are you most fascinated with?
Yeah, absolutely. So, just for a little bit of context, my journey in AI begun when I did a senior research project. So when I was a senior in high school, I thought, exploring AI in education would be really interesting, especially because at that point it was so new. ChatGPT had only been released 5 months ago at that point. So I started doing research and I realized that there wasn't really much out there in terms of how institutions, specifically educational institutions, are handling and integrating AI. So I thought it would be great to explore that space. So I did a research project there, and then that sort of led to me joining Encode Justice and sort of all this other work. Fast forward around 6, 7 months, now the student AI ambassador at Yale, and I'm most interested in exploring how we can leverage AI to augment the teaching and learning experience in order to create better learning experience where students feel engaged and enabled to really give their full sort of bandwidth in order to learn.
No, I definitely think AI in education might be even an underappreciated part because time and time again, we hear things about AI being a diverter for students away from actually having their own intellectual abilities. But I'm thinking in schools or areas that don't have, for example, the best teaching resources, AI or generative AI can be exactly what we need. So I think AI in education is one of the most fascinating parts of it for sure. But the second part of I just want to ask is in your role as a student ambassador. So what part of this role do you most enjoy?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say my favorite part of the role is just engaging with both faculty and students about how AI is, sort of in becoming an integral part of the educational experience. And I say an integral part because, like we were discussing, it's um, AI is becoming such an important part of how we approach our daily lives and education. We're seeing lots of companies innovate in this space. So I really love, starting the conversation with people and understanding how much they know about AI and what their perspectives are and, where those perspectives were informed from. So I think that's, just having those authentic conversations and hopefully pushing people in the direction of, okay, let me learn more about AI. Let me think about how, from a faculty perspective, how can I incorporate AI into my course? From a student perspective, how can I use it to help me learn and study? So those conversations are really fulfilling because they reveal a lot about the state of AI in education and the need, I think, for a lot of information to be disseminated about how to use AI in the proper and responsible way.
Yeah, no, I've also tried to get my friends into AI, not necessarily like the coding aspect, but also learning about how much potential it has as a technology. But I guess you kind of talked about what part of it about it you like in your role. I also want to figure out what your main goal is because I think kind of these two questions have a bit of a correlation.
Absolutely. Yeah. My main goal is to create an environment at Yale where AI is something that can be talked about across all different spaces, between all different people, between students and instructors. So essentially, I'm aiming for transparency, right? I think the first step of incorporating AI responsibly into Yale and any institution, which is, of course, a huge undertaking, is for there to be transparency, right? A lot of sort of action in AI and education before at the beginning of this sort of AI and education ed tech movement was centered around, okay, how can we catch students if they're cheating when using AI? But educators have realized that, first of all, that this shouldn't be our focus by any means. We shouldn't be treating AI like just another tool that students use. And rather than sort of positioning students in a way where they're fearful about using AI, there should be transparency about what the teachers expect from them, how they can use AI. And I think that the sort of the thing that people need to realize is, specifically educators and institutions, is that students are using AI, right? Whether or not their professors specifically say you can use it or not. So it's important to accept that and realize the best way forward is to talk about it transparently, right? So students can share with their classmates, hey, put my study material in an AI and ask the AI to ask me questions about the content. Like, that's a helpful strategy, and it's important that the professors know that, and that there's that discourse that's happening.
I also, as you were talking about students using AI and like AI checkers, that reminded me of this one thing that maybe I want to discuss briefly.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure it's a website called turnitin.com, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
And what I realized was that that software has an accuracy of like 98%, which sounds amazing. But when you apply something with a 98% accuracy into the field, there's always going to be 2% of students, hypothetically, that are disadvantaged just because of the fact that they get caught cheating for something that they didn't do. So do you think we should be using tools like this to detect AI usage or not?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think we should absolutely not be using these tools because, as you said, the 2% does manifest in many students every year. I believe
So
Turnitin serves millions of students. So, if you think about that 2%, it's a lot in actuality. And I've, heard many anecdotes from students who've been unfairly accused of using AI because, professors would put it into AI, put it into an AI detector and it would say like 90% or something of that nature. And I think this conversation brings up a larger question is of what are AI detectors? Why are we using them? So AI detectors, have two sort of metrics: burstiness and perplexity. And a lot of the recent literature that's come out has found that the AI detectors that leverage these metrics are unfairly positioned to discriminate against ESL and neurodiverse learners because for example, the syntax isn't as varied. The vocabulary may be a little bit different. So I believe overall it's really sort of a bad practice to use these detectors, and that's why, for example, Yale has prohibited the use of these detectors with AI since the very beginning, right? But yes, I think we should really steer away from this sort of, oh, let's figure out if these students are using the AI, and towards a learning model where students are incentivized to use it in a responsible way, in a way that will help them learn.
no, I completely agree. And myself being a user of Turnitin.com, I think in one of my classes, it's scary. And then you were also talking about how Yale banned the use of such devices. And I guess that segues us into our next question and the final one in this portion of the interview. So the final question is just going to be, what is the future of AI looking like for Yale University? And how does it really plan to incorporate AI into its curriculum in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Yale is doing an incredible job in beginning the sort of steps of responsibly integrating AI into its curriculum and pedagogy. Of course, a full-fledged rollout hasn't occurred yet because there's so many more questions. We need to answer so much more education we have to do about how AI works before it can be sort of a wide scale deployment. But I think Yale's approaching AI with a sort of cautious optimism sentiment. There are a lot of benefits that AI can bring, right? Personalized learning, dynamic, experiences, but at the same time, it can perpetuate biases and can, sort of surface hallucinations made by the AI. So it's, and there's also the data privacy aspect, right? And the ethics aspect. And there's so many hard questions here. But I think Yale has taken a really methodical approach whereby, we're consulting necessary stakeholders, doing sort of smaller scale experiments to see how that works, and really bringing people from all these different departments in at Yale, right? So I'm working with the IT department, I'm working with the people focused on teaching and learning, I'm working with the provost office, and I think that's just demonstrative of how multifaceted and sort of institutional this approach is. It's not just, oh, we're launching this one initiative, but no doubt, AI is going to sort of, I think, change the fabric of institutions, or rather change the fabric of how people learn at institutions. And I think it's a really exciting time to be a student and a professor and to think about these issues.
And I'm actively looking forward to seeing what my own school does with it. But I guess I really want to also talk about the responsible and ethical usage of AI, ranging from AI development all the way to the people that use AI using it in an ethical manner. So part two of this interview is going to be about the ethical and responsible usage of AI. So the first question I just want to ask is, how can we properly use AI as a resource at educational institutions, maybe even at Yale University, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an excellent question. Um, and I think it starts at the policy level, right? So having clear policies that have been disseminated by the administration, or relevant departments about how AI is being used, right? Or how AI can be used. And I think as downshifting from the policy level, which is more high level institutional, onto the actual use case. I think there are a lot of great examples that I can, sort of bring up about how you can use AI responsibly. One of them is, say you're studying for an exam, and it's short answer questions or even multiple choice. You can input your study guide into a tool like ChatGPT, and then ask ChatGPT, prompt it to give you questions about the content. So you're actively engaging with the content. So that's a really useful strategy that, is doesn't take away from the sort of knowledge acquisition experience, but instead adds to it. There are of course the risk of hallucinations and biases as one interacts with the models, but I think it's really important to note that AI is it has its limitations, right? And to teach people about those limitations is really important. And I think another way to use AI is ensuring that students sort of feel like they have a grasp on it, and that they can it's sort of a part of their course, both as a tool they use and as something they're learning about. So for example, in English courses, a professor can give an essay written by a student and then one written by an AI, and then they can the professor can have the students analyze each of those essays from a critical lens, and see where are the gaps in knowledge in the AI. Did it fabricate quotes, right? All these different facets, and like a sort of example like that, I feel like shines a lot of light on the limitations of AI. So I think that's a good activity as well. But of course, it depends on the domain or discipline. But there are really lots of great examples for how you can integrate AI in a responsible way.
And I guess I really want to bring in relevancy into this, and that's going to be what today's second question really connects to. And relevancy meaning the presidential election and even the primaries that will come up in just a few months. And what I've seen is there's so much discussion revolving about how AI is going to impact our election, because it's the obviously we've had AI for years, but it's the first year that AI is something that every single person is considering, whether they're voting or whether they're thinking about how the election is going to be impacted by AI. Because I think one of the big concerns is, what if you use AI to spread propaganda and mis and disinformation that in turn affect our people that obviously decide who wins the presidential election, and bring in unwanted decision that necessarily doesn't represent our people's views and things like that. So second question I want to ask is, if in the wrong hands, what is the potential of AI to be utilized to spread mis and disinformation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you bring up an excellent point, which is the risk of AI to be used by bad actors. There's so many risks sort of beyond the education sector, for using AI, right? I mentioned biases and hallucinations, and with sort of one person interacting with in AI, but you sort of think about a more large scale, like what if sort of a bad actor infiltrates an educational system and removes all guardrails, right? Like that could be could be very chaotic for students and teachers. But on a larger scope, there's a lot of national security concerns in terms of AI that can help people make bioweapons, and of course, many corporations and who disseminate AI models put out guardrails to ensure that that data isn't included in its training set and that people can't really prompt that. But at the same time, right, with the democratization of building models now, right? It's a sort of tool that people with enough technical expertise can use. Then people can create their own models without guardrails, right? So I think it is a sort of the necessity of a governmental approach and governmental action in mitigating the sort of risk of AI getting into the wrong hands. But it is, the risk I just mentioned is why, for example, the Future of Life Institute called for a 6-month pause on AI, which was many months ago now, or it feels like many months ago. But there are a lot of issues there, and I think it's like I mentioned, up to the U.S. government as well as other, agencies and important stakeholders to really ensure that we can, control AI and it doesn't get in the hands of bad actors. And if it does, how can we sort of dismantle that?
Yeah. And I guess with that being said, I'm also, I guess, excited to see how AI impacts the election, because something that people were considering was, for example, putting watermarks like this is created by AI and things like that to prevent mis and disinformation. But with that being said, I want to transition into the third portion of today's interview, which is really going to be encouraging youth involvement in AI and your work at Encode Justice. So the reason I really want to talk about this is because I saw that you yourself got involved in AI as a high schooler, and earlier in the beginning, you were talking about your senior project in AI, for example. So I guess I want to talk about when you initially started with AI. So was everything with AI now ranging from technical use, like just maybe even if you coded with AI, like Python, for example, that's how I got introduced to AI, all the way to exploring things like AI policy, regulation, and responsibility. So these are all multiple facets of AI. And so was everything with AI confusing when you initially started off?
So yeah, when I started off, for context, I also started off in the technical space as well. So I worked a lot with machine learning algorithms, taught myself Python and R. So mainly focused on the technical side. As I transitioned to more the societal risks of AI and how we can infuse it into different parts of our society in an effective way. It was definitely not the most clear because I mean, even relative to now, there wasn't sort of lots of literature as in research or news articles about how schools are, for example, using AI in education. And I know I'm focusing on education. Your question was about AI on a larger scale. It is, frankly, for people who are interested in getting involved, it can be a little bit overwhelming because there's so much information out there.
Yeah.
But for students who are interested, my sort of game plan would be first learn about what AI is, right? What is machine learning? What is natural language processing? Things of that nature. Once you have a solid foundation of AI, start to immerse yourself in the landscape of AI ethics, AI policy, and then as you continue exploring both or mainly the sort of societal risks, ask yourself, okay, and is this something I would prefer over technical, or would I rather explore the technical route? And then from there, I think it's really important that students try to find or see if they resonate with any specific application of AI or domain, and then from there start to hone in on where they can add value.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting to see that you recommended that people start off from the technical area, but that also me and you, I guess, share a commonality in that we started off. I think it definitely helped because once I understood like the core of what AI is and just coding in general, because coding's a different skill than I guess AI, because it can be used for many other things like web development, application development. But I guess basing off of that, I really learned that after I went through the process of learning the technicalities, then I got into machine learning because of Python, obviously, which enables machine learning. And then I started to explore things like Stanford Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence Institution, things like that. And then I really got into the policy, I guess, aspect, which is what I'm really stuck upon now because that's what fascinates me the most. And I guess going off of that and really AI policy also, I know that Encode Justice is an institution that focuses off of not only educating the community on AI, but also pushing for, I guess, youth involvement. So what's your goal as the chair of the AI Issue Advisory Council at Encode Justice?
Yeah, so for a little background, for those who aren't familiar with Encode Justice, it's one of the world's largest coalitions advocating for and advancing human-centered AI. So we have about 900 or over 900 members now across 35 countries and 45 states. So I joined Encode Justice. Frankly, I just sent a cold email to the founder many months ago. And from there, it sort of grew into something which I didn't even imagine, but I'm very happy that it materialized. So I started as the AI and education advisor, did lots of work there. I still am the AI and education advisor, but I've also created and led and am leading the issue advisory council. So our goal there is essentially to bring together tons of different people with AI, with experience in domain specific areas of AI. So we have over 25 advisors ranging from high school students to college students, postgrads, people in the workforce, and they focus on analyzing education, national security, democracy, climate, criminal justice, labor, and am I forgetting one? And health. So we have 25 advisors. They're sort of split up based on their expertise. So our main goal is to provide all these key stakeholders, and specifically in reference to policy, right? Policymakers. We want to provide them with as much relevant information as possible about how AI is impacting these different domains. So we work with many congressional partners, and we've disseminated over 7 memos in the domains that I just mentioned to our congressional partners. And this sort of just, the goal is, of course, to inform policy and provide them with more information about decisions that they're having to make, such as, how can we ensure that AI doesn't get into the hands of bad actors, as we were discussing before. Or how can we use AI to improve, climate functions, or environmental functions within a certain facility. So of course, or within not a certain facility, but with throughout the U.S., as they would be regulated on that. But yeah, in essence, it's just to provide not only congressional partners, but also the stakeholders that we work with across industry, academia, um, and civil society, and other governmental partners with relevant information for them to make informed policy decisions.
Yeah, and I think fostering, I guess, a youth involvement in AI is something that I'd consider one of the most important parts of it, just because we will be the next generation who controls what happens with this technology and will be the people that develop it. And so I guess that takes us into the final question, which is how can students get involved in Encode Justice? Because it's, I mean, a wonderful opportunity if you're looking to get involved in any aspect of AI.
Yeah, so in Code Justice, it's very easy to get involved. So we have a chapter network with over, as I mentioned, over 900 members, and that's based on region. For example, I live in California, so I would technically, if I was joined as a new member, I would join as a part of the California chapter. So we have a Slack in which you can join, and then you just go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we get you set up with the lead in your respective region. And the goal of the chapters is to enact change on a local or regional level, also national. So they have that regional and focus, and they also contribute to national efforts. But yeah, people who are interested or students who are interested can get involved in education, policy, advocacy, technical, all these different facets, whatever interests them. They can get involved, and it really is a wonderful opportunity. I mentioned before, I only got involved um, around, I think it's been 6 or 7 months now, and it's so much has happened then, in terms of really advancing these initiatives for myself, growing my own sort of brand and advancing this work, but also for the organization and for the larger discourse of AI. We've really done an excellent job in advancing this work.
Yeah. And I'll also be sure to link the Encode Justice website below in the description for anyone wanting to check it out. But with that being said, that concludes today's interview. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course, yeah, it was great to speak with you, and hope to continue the conversation. And whoever's listening and interested in this space, please apply to Encode Justice. And yeah,
And for anyone watching this, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and share with your friends.